Right. Good morning, good afternoon from around the world. We've got three Cisco folks here that will take you through a conversation on the journey towards digitizing your roadway infrastructure and building in security all the way through. My name is Alex Clark. I am a transportation market specialist for Cisco, joining you from Boston. My colleagues will give a little bit of their background as they take the ball as we go forward, joining you from around the world. What we want to discuss today is the criticality of building in a secure digital foundation to our roadway infrastructure, and it couldn't be more important. Our cities, our transportation departments, highway agencies, our mayors, governors, and presidents, prime ministers are all looking at transportation to really drive big change in our societies. We see the emergence of more connected and moving towards autonomous vehicles. We see different mobility patterns. Post-COVID, settlement patterns are different. People are moving around our cities and our regions differently. And we're trying to incorporate new ways of using our roadway infrastructure. And the global push for electrification for the climate imperative is important and difficult to solve for. So with all this change and all of these opportunities coming to the market, the need for building a secure digital foundation couldn't be stronger. Now, as we go towards that future, we have to solve for big picture challenges. Safety is always paramount. We need to build safe systems. We have generally safe systems today, but they can be much better. We need to solve for congestion. We need to have visibility across our regional environment so we can reduce the wasted costs and the overhead of congestion, bring less friction to moving around our regions, and we need to reduce the carbon emissions and the fuel costs of doing that. Those all kind of coalesce around other ways of charging for road usage and other business models and challenges in the funding landscape. So there's a lot we get to work on as transportation professionals around the world. What we do at Cisco is bring a platform for secure digital connectivity to our customers, with our customers, to help them along that journey from unconnected to fully connected so that they can build savings, build efficiencies, and build the platforms of the future. You see here a couple of stats about the cost of congestion or the cost of emissions and the imperative for safety. Now, on that safety thread, the cybersecurity fundamentals that we're all in this boat together, rowing to the shore, it's really important to get right. Transportation infrastructure is critical infrastructure. Critical infrastructure must be protected, and we need to build in defense in depth at many layers of the stack, from the edge to our TMCs to the cloud, in the way we access our systems, in who and how we grant trust for the smallest zones of trust. These are all consistent with standards from NIST in the United States, the global standards like IEC 62443, specific directives coming from our national and state governments, asking us to improve our posture and be on that continuous journey, and even private sector legislation or private sector directive that changes insurance costs for cyber. We all know it's important. That's why we're here today to talk about three ways that we can build in security into our infrastructures natively. And all of our critical infrastructure sectors are on this journey. Transportation is a unique sector, but it's not unique in the challenge. We have to solve for operational objectives. We need to reduce the risk. We need to be compliant with external pressures, but we also need to use this opportunity to improve overall system safety while maintaining continuity of operations. At the same time, this presents a good opportunity for our organizations to bring ITS and OT and our CISOs together to look at moving system-wide risk out of the system as we bring in new applications, as we get better data and visibility across our operating picture. So we'll talk today about what we can do to get started, where you can go to learn more, how you can work with Cisco on different places in your connectivity landscape to build security in. And I wanted to share a couple of stats that I think kind of frame the size of the problem we're dealing with. Of all of the industries, of all of the different market segments, this is from a report in 2022, the last year with really reliable data we can talk about right now. Transportation is a very visible and lucrative sector to attack, both from internal attackers and external. The payoff is highly visible, highly disruptive, and highly lucrative in the space. So we're seeing attacks emerge from all sorts of places, and these are some recent stats from a Cisco report and an INRIX report. The most of our attacks in transportation are coming from external, but they're coming in through social engineering. They're coming in through, maybe it's our maintainers out on the roadside edge that are doing a fantastic job, but need a little bit more support to protect the cabinet. Right, number two keys are still widely available. Maybe it's stealing credentials. The risk of these vulnerabilities is growing. And one of the things we're seeing in critical infrastructure, and transportation is not unique here, is that once we find a vulnerability, the attackers are moving laterally. They get in somewhere and they move around side to side and they wait, and then they turn on the attack and they exploit those vulnerabilities. Cisco recently has acquired Splunk. We're really excited about what this brings to our overall story for the journey towards AI and cybersecurity. But this statement from Jason really got me thinking the other day when we were discussing it internally. From the global view Splunk has on data from Cisco data and non-Cisco data, it takes about 7 minutes for someone to get into a network, move laterally, and cover their tracks. I know that most of our cabinets are open for more than 7 minutes. I know that we have lots of people out in the roadside edge that presents a place that is pretty easy to get into from both the cyber and physical side. And we need to secure the edge as we look at our data strategy, our cyber strategy, and look at where we put our applications. So it's a journey towards continuous improvement, but we know that when we get it wrong, or when we are fighting this threat, it's very visible. Pass in a second here to my colleague Pete, who's going to take us through some specific strategies that we can build in security to our infrastructures. But I wanted to start with this idea of the journey. Your agencies, your state, your operation is very likely to be heterogeneous. You don't have homogeneous deployment of technology. You probably have construction projects that have built technology and put things in service a long time ago, and you're building new applications across your system. So as you move in this journey from unconnected intersections, let's say bringing basic IP connectivity to a traffic controller, towards a fully connected environment where you're working on TISMO, and my colleagues will talk about some of these things later, we have some ways we can help you move to improve your cybersecurity posture, to be on this journey for continuous improvement. It's not a point in time. Security is never done. It's something you build into your infrastructure, because when you have that solid foundation, you can go towards that future faster with more confidence, and you're spending your precious dollars better. So Pete, I'll pass to you here to talk us through a little bit more detail on the problems and how we can solve them.
Thanks, Alex. So yeah, delighted to be with you today. I'm Pete Kavanagh. I'm a principal architect for our industrial IoT business. I'm based in Ireland, but I'm very fortunate to get to work with roadways operators and departments and transports in Europe, North America, and around the world. And to Alex's point on, customers find themselves, various points across a spectrum from unconnected to fully connected. It's not for lack of ambition. It's not for lack of, I really want to kind of, do some new use cases, unlock some savings from my organization, unlock some new safety outcomes for our vulnerable road users. But they're faced with some pretty challenging roadblocks, right? A lot of customers are pretty legacy when it comes to the network itself. Not necessarily the actual network devices, although some of them are a little bit older in the lifespan. They like to kind of sweat the assets, which is fine. But more challenging is the network architectural approach. I kind of have a bit of a running joke with some of the industry folks I spend time with, and we between myself and those, we put it between 20 and 25 years out of date in terms of the thinking about how we do networking. Somewhere in the kind of the late 90s, early 2000s is how a lot of customers still approach the kind of networking they're doing for roadways. Even if they got like brand new hardware they purchased a year ago, they're leveraging it in kind of a very legacy way, which is in a way holding them back. Also, we touched on it. The cyber threat is kind of very real. That the hacks are happening, and to Alex's point, it's actually disproportionately affecting the transportation space compared to other industries and other verticals. And what kind of makes it a little bit more challenging is the more use cases we want to add to, for example, improve the safety of vulnerable road users, the downside is that gives us an increased exposure. So it's almost like we're being punished for kind of doing the right thing. So it's something we've got to take on and take on, actively and solve for. Also, a lot of customers would love like a single solution, like one size that fits everything. But unfortunately, that's not the case. Many customers, occupy the real world in challenging scenarios. So they may be in spots where they'd love to have fiber but don't, in spots where cellular coverage is a little bit challenging. How do we kind of solve for that? So just the real world kind of presents itself as a challenge and brought in the connectivity everywhere we need to. And from a traffic engineer's perspective, I've never met a traffic engineer that said I want less data. They all want more data. They want more real-time data. And so for us, working from an IT team, from an ITS team, with the network, with an IT system to deliver that telemetry, that information to the traffic engineers to allow them to do their job better, is kind of a kind of a little bit of a continuous challenge we're working through. So there's three things we really wanted to kind of go through here in terms of some key building blocks for this foundation for secure roadways. I'm going to start with secure remote access. We're going to look at visibility, and we're going to finish up here in my section with segmentation. So on the overall secure journey, it's important to understand that to Alex's earlier point, transportation is in some ways unique, but in other ways, it's just another kind of like an industrial network, which is good because there's wider industry frameworks and approaches we can leverage to kind of, we're not having to do everything from scratch for the first time. It's a pretty well-trodden road. And, this is a journey we've taken many customers on across many industrial verticals. Very much aligned with the industry best practices like 62443, et cetera, that Alex was mentioning. So building a security foundation is kind of key, having that relationship between IT and OT, OT being ITS in the case of traffic and traffic ops. I think the point earlier, around having that security, like maybe the approach is to say, I've got an IT network, a big firewall, and my ITS network, and that's kind of how I'm choosing to solve it today. And I think a lot of customers have traditionally looked at it that way and kind of kept the ITS network at arm's length, and that in some way is kind of keeping the problem out of sight, out of mind. I think accepting the fact there has to be an interaction between those different networks and those different organizations is kind of really important. We think we have a very good, strong networking portfolio, especially on the industrial networking side, to build that secure foundation. Having the security posture and ZTNA, zero trust network access for the traffic devices is kind of really important, right? So the ability to say, I've got different devices in my network that different people need access to. I want to achieve that in a least privileged way, so I'm not giving too much network access, too much network reach to people that don't need it. That's a good conservative approach to minimize my exposure. And we'll touch on how Cisco Secure Equipment Access and Cisco Cyber Vision are really kind of two key pieces of doing that. A lot of customers, we also then take on that journey of network segmentation, right? It's a very standard best practice. You'll see it in the NIST documentation and IEC 62443 documentation to segment my network into smaller zones of trust. So if I've got a group of devices, a group of users, a group of use cases that are interacting with each other, let's put them in a network segment. Let's kind of box that in and make that successful. And let's not have that having access to other unrelated systems. Again, it's just good best practice, good kind of common sense to minimize the exposure there. And then inevitably, and unfortunately, there will at some point be some kind of incident, something that happens that we wish didn't, but it does. And so having a very solid incident investigation and response using something like Cisco XDR, along with the whole underpinning of the Talos threat intelligence and incident response, is kind of overall, I think, a good framework to think how Cisco can kind of help touch across all of these main foundational elements. So going to the zero trust network access, this is, like I said, something that really is kind of a challenge for customers today, right? Most ITS customers I meet to are stuck in the world of doing truck rolls, right? If they have a problem out in the field, their solution is to put a guy or gal in a van, send them out there with their laptop and a couple of cables and plug stuff in and get stuff working. there's a cost to that. There's a cost in terms of there's a a journey time, and there's an amount of downtime happens at that ITS asset. Also, there's a staffing cost. That person is effectively like tied up with driving and troubleshooting. A lot of this stuff can be done remotely using kind of almost like remote access technology. However, a lot of organizations aren't well set up to achieve that. I think what we've done with our secure equipment access is really made it incredibly simple to enable those remote access sessions for both internal employees and service providers and contractors to come in as and when is required to troubleshoot, fix, patch, in general, get things back online, get things back healthy again. And the key thing for us is that we're doing that in a clientless way. So we're not having to have people install a bunch of software. We're making it very frictionless to get that remote access session spun up, but all the time without compromising on the security behind it. So for the organization that this infrastructure belongs to, they're in full control about what's going on. They can decide who can access what and when they can access it with which protocols. And we can record those sessions as well for everyone's peace of mind. So that is a kind of least privilege access, acting as a trust broker. But the last thing here to kind of just before we go on to the next slide is that this technology is actually running on our network devices, right? So you don't have to go out and buy a whole new box to do this. This technology is running as a kind of a software agent inside the network you've already got kind of out at the edge, be it routers, switches, cellular fiber. Right, so this is a technology we're seeing, customers really find great use in. So I'm just going to very briefly show you what that looks like. Just going to bring up my browser here a second. Okay, so this is our Secure Equipment Access ZTNA portal that you would see as a user that's logged into it. Now, I'm as an administrator, so I can see all kind of the bells and whistles to go and change stuff. But if I'm just logged in as a regular operator, I have a very simple experience. I just see the things that are relevant for me, the sessions I have access to get my job done. But I just wanted to show the administrator view just so I can show you the kind of the role-based access control we can have here. So if I look at my access management, for the group I'm looking at here today, I can see, for example, the users in this group. So only users in this group have access to the assets this group is related to. So I have 3 users. It's myself and 2 colleagues in Cisco who have access to this group. And we have access to 8 different assets. We have access to, for example, a Daktronics VFC, which I'm going to switch to in a second, and also a SWARCO traffic controller, amongst other things. So again, we're very much locking down that relationship between users having access, the devices they've got access to, and now here I'm limiting it also to the access method. So for example, I'm only going to allow people in this group to access the Daktronics digital sign controller using a web browser app, right? They can't SSH in, they can't do any other access, they can just access a web browser app. And lastly, if I want to, I can come in here and say, everything in this group, I want to go ahead and maybe toggle on this monitoring and recording. So every time someone uses this group to connect to a device, that session is going to be recorded and archived off, and that's for everyone's kind of peace of mind. Similarly, I can come in here and say, actually, I want this only to be available in a particular time window. So I can start and stop that and kind of limit what's going on. And so just to kind of show you the overall experience, if I log in and filter on this group, I can see my Daktronics VFC. Now it's actually on the floor behind me. It's actually a little appliance device which would be driving a very large, potentially street sign on a gantry over maybe a freeway or a motorway. And I can click into that just from my web browser as if I'm anywhere in the world with the right credentials without having to install any extra software. And it's now as if I've taken my laptop to the side of the road and plugged directly in the traffic cabinet. I can see the native Daktronics web interface inside here, and I can see straight away there's a problem with the NTC IP for the sign. I can click into that. I can just look maybe in the system health, and very quickly I can see there's an error on the controller. All right, so helping me kind of just with a couple of clicks in the native interface I'm used to working at, get straight into the problem. And this can be exposed to maybe me as an ITS operator in a DOT, or it could equally be exposed to an external specialist I'm bringing in to help troubleshoot in a very, very seamless way. So that's Cisco Secure Equipment Access, working in terms of being a ZTNA gateway. Just going to bring it back into the slides. So moving from the remote access sessions into visibility, right? I think that, Alex touched on it earlier as well. Getting visibility in terms of what's going on is kind of really important and almost like one of the first steps in terms of understanding the landscape, the set of trouble you're facing. We've talked about how transportation is now effectively critical infrastructure. Well, congratulations. That means we've unfortunately taken on some extra responsibilities. We really can't continue to live in a world where we don't know what's out there, we don't know what's going on. The kind of imperative really to identify those assets, to identify what they're doing, what they're talking to, what protocols they're using. Can we find any vulnerabilities in them? How can we then build a kind of a prioritized list of things to go and patch and address? How can we then also leverage that understanding to do the kind of remote access I was just showing to troubleshoot the assets and configuration issues? So overall, have that network now be an asset that's helping you versus something that's kind of dragging you back, right? And so visibility is really the first step there. Visibility for roadways is kind of an emerging space, right? There's been maybe traditional ITS devices which have been connected for the longest time. There's other ITS devices which are really just moving from that unconnected to connected state on Alex's journey. And that really varies, but every customer is different. But in general, things like traffic lights have maybe been connected for some time. Things like V2X radios are kind of new, and it's something that traffic engineers are kind of figuring out how we connect those things up and what they're connected to and what protocols they're talking. And getting visibility across this space is definitely a challenge. Our CyberVision solution, in terms of the back-end monitoring and that being based on network sensors running in all the network elements themselves, really means that there's no data flow that escapes us. We can really see everything that's going on, share that back in a very summarized way with both IT and ITS teams, so they get a full picture and visibility in terms of what's going on. And understanding that, I think, is important. And I was actually talking to a cybersecurity officer from a large US state DOT earlier this week, and he was sharing, a challenge that they'd had relatively recently, where 20-something traffic light junction intersections lights went offline, right? And he got a pretty quick call from the CIO saying, "Is this a cyber attack?" And he said, "I don't know." And they don't know because he didn't have any visibility in terms of what's going on, right? So getting visibility, I think, is really key. And like with secure equipment access, a huge benefit here is that no extra hardware is required for this. The Cisco routers, switches, etc., that you're already deploying in your network can run this CyberVision sensor. So I think that's a really important kind of capability to have. The sensors at the edge spotting every single layer 2 and layer 3 Ethernet and IP packet and flow between all the devices, sharing it back in a very summarized and focused reported way to our CyberVision Center, really gives the visibility to both the IT and the ITS teams they need to kind of start really planning on how they would go about securing that whole landscape. As part of doing that refresh to get the kind of network hardware that can do SCA and CyberVision, it's generally part of the network modernization customers are doing. When I mentioned earlier about that old approach, so just buying a new box isn't necessarily in and of itself network modernization. I think buying the new box and also doing an architectural approach around that is going to be overall what really moves you on in your modernization journey. And you're not modernizing for modernization's sake. You're doing it to support the secure and scalable network, really with the end goal of all of the ITS use cases that the traffic engineers want to do to improve, safety for vulnerable road users, reduce emissions, reduce journey times. All the things we want to do is all enabled by that network modernization. Again, very common to see a traffic cabinet like this with a traffic signal controller. Here it's a Siemens device. Maybe we have a cellular router. It's very common for us to see something like a Cisco IR1101 industrial router there, but also maybe an IE3000 switch. It could be in addition to the router. It could be by itself in a fiber-based environment. It really depends on the physical location this traffic cabinet's in, and then in this case maybe a cellular antenna on the roof of the cabinet as well. We have the 3100 switch, which is a really great compact switch, which our customers have found very helpful. Traffic cabinets, this one's quite spacious. Some traffic cabinets are very, very compressed on space. They're very densely packed. There's hardly space to fit anything in there. So it's been very well received that we've got a very small switch in terms of the actual size of it with the 3100, but it's small but very, very powerful, of course. We have the 3300, which is a great switch bringing in 10 gig capabilities and also very high power PoE capabilities as well. Very well received from our customers who want to drive more and more high powered cameras. And lastly, maybe from a fiber aggregation perspective, our new 9300 switches, which we introduced pretty recently, bringing 10 gig uplinks and 1 gig copper and fiber downlinks, some stacking capabilities in there, and also very high power PoE as and when that's required. On the routing side, we have the IR1101, very heavily deployed by DOTs and roadways operators, a very small but powerful cellular router. And this is going to be by itself or potentially with extra modules to add more cellular interfaces. We have the 1835, which we're having more DOTs deploy. It's got a little bit more horsepower. We can run more edge applications on there. We can do dual 5G, and we can do some pretty interesting use cases with this in terms of the CITS type of use cases. And lastly, we have the 8340, which is our biggest router in this space. And this has actually been something we've been working with a couple of DOTs on recently, where this is doing precision timing, so it's very interesting in terms of connected vehicle use cases where you need that very, very tight timestamping of data and information. We're going to pull that from a GPS GNSS satellite feed and share that across the ITS network. Just want to call out again, secure equipment access, cyber vision, running on these network devices. So you've already done the modernization of buying the new box, you've done the more modern network architectural approach, and now we can just enable, with a couple of mouse clicks, these services on these devices to do the key workloads I was describing earlier. And so into segmentation. So we kind of talked about the remote access challenge, getting visibility is a challenge, how we can help solve that. But part of taking this network modernization approach is the better architecture that I was talking about. And one of those architectural kind of decision points is really about segmentation. Part of that, running joke about being 20, 25 years old in terms of your architectural approach is a lot of customers have this very flat network, which means on one hand, it's very simple, or at least it appears to be simple because everything's like in the same VLAN as a layer 2 thing, or maybe in the same IP subnet on layer 3. I can get everywhere. I keep track of everything in a big Excel spreadsheet. But on the other hand, that comes a lot of challenges in terms of how do I make that resilient? How do I have some control over what's going on? And really adopting, if nothing else, a very kind of basic but powerful network segmentation scheme is probably a really good approach. Here, the diagram shows maybe a fiber switching approach where I've got two different network segments. I'm saying I'm going to put most of my ITS devices in segment A, my traffic signal controller, my pedestrian detection, etc. And that's mapping back to a traffic management server in a TMC. In segment B, I've got all of my cameras, right? And that's going back to video storage and video analytics back in my TMC as well. The reason I'm doing that is because I don't have any use cases that needs those two things to talk to each other. So I've got the opportunity to separate them out. The reason I'm separating them out is because it's just best practice. It's just minimizing my exposure. Heavens forbid, if something bad happens on one of my cameras, if that gets hacked somehow, the worst somebody can do is to just break the cameras, right? They're not going to be able to get from there into my traffic signal controller and actually cause me, actual operational problems from a signals perspective. And so by taking this kind of pretty simplistic segmentation approach, it's a great first step in terms of breaking up that one large network into smaller networks. And as I mentioned earlier, that's very much aligned with leading industrial security frameworks such as the NIST and the 62443. So one way we can do that on the cellular world is leveraging Cisco SD-WAN. Now, Cisco SD-WAN is something that we're seeing really good increased adoption from transportation customers. it's doing a couple of things. It's basically saying I can do that segmentation I was just talking about. I can do that across any transports, whether we've got 4G, 5G, fiber, DSL, Starlink, another satellite solution. It doesn't really matter. We can build automatic secure VPN tunnels across that. I can deploy that at the roadside at the TMC, and I can overlay a lot of cool technology kind of within that. So SD-WAN is as a portfolio from Cisco is something that's really, really attractive for plugging and playing these routers, getting them online, getting them secured, and automating that network segmentation. The network segmentation is just one part. Overall, the macro topic is security, right? And SD-WAN does a really great job of not only automating the initial provisioning of the box, the initial bring up of those automatic VPN tunnels, but then within that, creating those macro segments, creating also micro-segmentation policies, and in general, enabling like next generation firewall with industrial IPS across, potentially thousands of routers out in the field. DOTs, when Cassie and Alex and myself meet with them, they're increasingly looking to cellular routers to just solve their connectivity problems, right? Every DOT has some fiber. Most DOTs wish they have more fiber, but even the DOTs that are blessed with a huge amount of fiber, they still have remote locations, right? And to solve for them, it would just be completely, uneconomical and impractical to expect to extend fiber out to all those locations. Instead, let's put a cellular router out there. Maybe let's use two different cellular carriers if we think it's a critical, part of our network. Again, SD-WAN automatically takes care of load balancing and failing over between those and having them active as well. And so SD-WAN as a cellular-focused solution is increasingly being, turned to from Cisco by our DOT customers to go and solve those problems for them. One size doesn't fit all, like with the rest of the conversation. So we have the smaller routers, the larger ones, and then also the fully outdoors ones as well. We have a large US city at the moment who's deploying the Cisco Catalyst IR8140 router in a way to solve the problem of the traffic cabinet being full. They're saying, well, rather than trying to squeeze a router in the traffic cabinet that's already full, the ITS engineers are getting stressed out about, we're going to take this outdoor router, put it a little bit up on the traffic pole, out of reach of physical security problems, and it's going to be doing all of that security stuff for us. So it's interesting to see different customers look to the portfolio in different ways to solve those different problems. But again, very, very strong portfolio. Every single one of our industrial routers can be a full SD-WAN member, be it small, medium, large, indoor and outdoor. So I think the other thing that's really driving the need for segmentation is just the increase in, what would be, I guess, pretty much viewed as complex use cases, right? Use cases where you're doing intelligent transportation systems, use cases where you're trying to do more kind of safety-focused use cases, vulnerable road users. We're seeing more customers deploy use cases like this, where we've got maybe the traffic signal controller. We're using Cisco Edge Intelligence as kind of an edge data broker, data manipulating software to talk to the signal controller, but also talk to maybe some V2X radios and some radar or LiDAR units. Those radar units are doing edge perception to spot cyclists, pedestrians, etc. The V2X radio is then starting to broadcast those safety messages to the nearby vehicles which are within range of that. And all of this is happening in a small box at the side of the road, right? And this box used to do almost nothing. So overnight, we've kind of come in with a bunch of new hardware and software in there. We've plugged it all together. We've got this exciting use case working, but by doing that, we've just created a whole new set of exposures. So how do we kind of, at the same time as lighting up the use cases, solve for those exposures, do the network segmentation, do the visibility, enable the zero trust network access remote sessions into those devices. So again, these new use cases are becoming like a forcing function to make us really kind of sit up and address the need to do the modernization, including segmentation and everything else. So I just want to quickly switch back to my laptop here and show the simplicity of adding the network segmentation. So this is Cisco Catalyst SD-WAN Manager. This is the kind of the overall management station that you would use to look at your cellular routers. Again, it just gives you a very simple way of kind of just seeing what's happening. Here I'm looking at an IR1101 industrial router. Actually, it's behind me here on my wall in my house. I can see that I've got a couple of different VPN tunnels, but they're not all performing equally well. Like the dark blue one at the bottom and the kind of the yellowy golden one is pretty consistent. You can see there. But the other blue colored one is a little bit jumping up and down on the graph. So it's something going on there. We can see the latency is much higher on that, and the jitter is higher as well. So it really allows me to kind of work between the traffic ops ITS team, the IT team, the telecoms team to kind of get into some of the details about what's going on there, getting the visibility in terms of what's happening on the network. But if I want to go and make some changes, it's also pretty simple. So I can come in here, and this is my configuration profile for that router. Now I've got, like I had in my diagram, two different network segments defined. I've got one here for cameras and one here for the rest of my ITS network. And it's only taken me a couple of clicks in this nice GUI to kind of create that. But what if I wanted to just go ahead and make a whole new network segment for maybe V2X radios, right? I can come in and create a whole new VPN. I can just call it V2X radios. I can just give it a number there. I can also just go in here, give it a quick short name. Oops. And I hit save. And I've now added this whole new network segment called V2X radios. I can now apply this template to thousands of routers in one go. And like almost instantly, I've now created this whole new network segment for V2X radios, and I can make that appear across my entire ITS network. So again, the concept of network segmentation is simple. Maybe people would argue in practice it's difficult to implement. I think leveraging something like Cisco SD-WAN, I think it's actually very easy to implement. And to do it another way is actually pretty hard. So rather than kind of hold ourselves back and say, well, we'd love to do it, but it's too hard, that landscape has changed with modern networking tools and network automation, and now we've really enabled that to be a lot easier than it ever was before. So just to kind of close out on where we are in the roadway space, I think Cisco has a lot of good history in the roadway space overall in terms of the architectures I've been describing. We have a much larger complete network architecture for connected roadways, which really covers the fiber, cellular, DSL, be it metropolitan areas, remote areas, point-to-point radios, the whole thing, really from the roadside to the TMC and everything in between. It's a pretty large and very comprehensive network, but I just want to kind of zoom in really on that bottom corner for a minute and look at where most customers are at, right? And it's at that roadside cabinet. Just as a reminder, we've got the industrial routers, we've got the industrial switches. They can be used together, they can be used independently, whether it's a cellular scenario or a fiber-based scenario, or maybe adding extra LAN ports to a cellular-based scenario. The key thing in that cloud icon is we can connect to anything. So whether you've got private LTE, you've got public LTE, private APN, Starlink, DSL, dark fiber, lit fiber, we can build a secure network tunnel over all of that. So that's a really, really powerful place for us to be, to connect from the roadside back to the TMC. All of our routers can do Catalyst SD-WAN edge roll. We can have all of them being the layer 7 zone-based next-gen firewall with the industrial IPS. Cybervision sensor giving us that ITS visibility right at the edge of the network, the edge intelligence to do the kind of special ITS use cases to talk to radar, LiDAR, V2X, etc., and having secure equipment access kind of also at the edge there as well. So all of that really can fit inside a traffic cabinet, pretty powerful. What makes all this possible for us is our validated designs. So we don't just talk about it, we actually do it. We spend a lot of time in really tapping up the top experts across Cisco, top experts across the ITS ecosystem, working with kind of leading vendors. We build it in our labs, we test it, we document it, and we share it with the world. And having those proof points, having our customers deploy the validated designs, giving that feedback loop to us, having them influence what we do in our validated designs, is something we've done in the roadway space for a number of years. And we've got some great industry relationships there we've been building up, and we'll continue to enjoy working with those customers. So Cassie, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Pete. I've just got, let me share here. I've just got about 50 slides to close us out in the next 15 minutes. I'm just kidding. Guys, my name is Cassie McEnroe. I am the IoT sales leader here at Cisco for US Public Sector. So I'm very excited to chat with you guys today and just kind of bring a few things together and close us out. So Alex and Pete did an awesome job of talking about, where Cisco's positioned, where we're looking at when we're looking at, building out that secure digital roadside infrastructure. One of the things that we're seeing is as organizations are on this roadway digitization journey, one of the challenges we're seeing is the complexity within the organizations, right? So, back 10, 15 years ago, when you wanted to address traffic congestion, you wanted to decrease traffic congestion, you wanted to increase safety, you wanted to improve traffic flow and predictability, you would pave another lane of roads, right? You would lay more concrete. Well, we can't. We're in a position now where we can't do that any longer, right? We're running out of real estate to continuously just add lanes for traffic. So it's become let's look towards technology for technology to help us address reducing congestion, being able to have people move through our cities, our states quicker and faster, right? Getting that really good predictability in traffic flow and increasing safety. So one of the things that we're seeing is, there's a lot of complexity within our organizations. There's a lot of different silos or groups that need to speak to each other. You have your IT team who build and work with complex IT core networks day in and day out, right? But maybe haven't always worked on the roadside piece or with the roadside group. You have your engineering team, your ITS team, that's what they do, right? They are focused on roadway. How do we move people? How do we get mobility going through our cities? And then you have your security ops teams, right? Looking at setting those policies, procedures, and practices in place throughout your whole organization to make sure you guys are compliant with increased cyber threats or attacks that are happening. One of the things that Cisco, I think we do really well is that we can help bring all of these groups, your traffic ops, your traditional IT, and your security teams together, and we can enable all of your stakeholders, all of these groups to work together for that goal of reducing congestion, getting better predictability in our traffic flows, and increasing safety along our roadways, right? We can help with ITS looking at giving you, Pete talked about giving you visibility on the roadways to reduce downtime. So you're not rolling 30, 40 trucks a day, right, out to each of these locations. We can give you that visibility into the roadside, right? We can work with IT to extend their current policies that they have on the core network out to the roadside network and help them put enforcement and containment and segmentation that Pete talked about. And then also, making sure that security is at the forefront. Alex did a great job of talking about how transportation is critical infrastructure and it's becoming a big attack vector for bad actors. So how can we make sure that whatever your organization's risk compliance policies are, that they're put in place and flow out through to the edge, to your field network. So as we look, I talked about, we're on this digitization journey, right? We're no longer just paving lanes to help us become smarter and quicker and more efficient. We're really on, and we see customers all along this spectrum, right? Where you have unconnected infrastructure, you have basic connectivity, you have flexible, secure connectivity, and you have fully connected, right? There is no right, wrong answer to this connected journey. It's going to be a hodgepodge, right? You are going to have some corridors that are fully connected, that have a full TISMO system out there, right? Where you can see, you're getting the most performance out of your transportation systems possible. And you've probably got a lot of technology out there, right? That's enabling you and helping you to be able to do that. And then you'll have some intersections that are always going to be, all you need is basic connectivity. You're just doing SPAT MAT data, right? And that's perfect. That's all you need. And then you'll have others that will have, you need connectivity along the roadways, alerting passengers of or drivers of lane closures, accidents ahead, weather events, emergency evacuations, etc. And then and then again looking at secure connectivity for maybe emergency vehicle preemption or buses. How can we rapidly move our buses through our city, right? There's no right, wrong answer. But Cisco, we're here to help you, and we're purposely building out platforms and solutions that can help you address every single one of these steps on this journey. So, to bring it all together, right? Cisco, we've been a trusted networking leader for the past 30 years. And we also have the best of cybersecurity. So what we're doing is we're bringing those together, we're marrying those together, and we're putting purpose-built solutions out on the edge. So we don't just come out with, we don't just have one product that addresses one thing. We purposely build, you heard Pete talk about, all of our hardware that we have available. You have the ability to, it's inherent, security is inherently built in or can be added on to our products versus going out and trying to piecemeal together a secure infrastructure solution. With Cisco, we're always going to inherently build a solution that's going to give you visibility, that's going to have a zero trust network access, so you know exactly who's accessing your equipment, when and if they should be accessing it, and we'll give you the ability to segment off your network so that you have that network segmentation so that if an attack does happen, it's contained and you know exactly where it went, when it came in, and how to address it. So when we look at really, this digitizing our roadway infrastructure, it's really all around the ability to be able to deploy secure, reliable, resilient solutions at the roadside edge, being able to collaborate between your organizations, so between traffic ops, between IT, and between your security groups, so that you have a best-in-class secure networking foundation or platform that will enable you and help you to grow along your digitization journey. Because like we said, it's going to be different for each corridor, for each intersection, for, it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all. So it's really looking at, how can we build that secure, that resilient solution that will help us grow, that will help us work together better as an organization. And Cisco, we work with a ton of DOT, cities, counties, all across, the U.S. and globally abroad. And we feel that we have a fantastic complete portfolio that can address all, connectivity, security, along with a proven roadways ecosystem. So we work very closely with hundreds of the ecosystem players, partners out there. We're not just a one size kind of fits all, just Cisco. We will integrate with other ecosystem roadways solutions or vendors out there. And all of this is built into Pete showed us a Cisco validated design to help you be able to do a secure deployment at scale to give you visibility and manageability of it. So that's what we had to share with you guys today. One thing I did want to highlight, Alex, Pete, and myself, we will be at ITS Americas along with our teams in Phoenix in a week and a half, 2 weeks. We would love for you to come by, stop, see us, tell us what you're doing along this digitization journey, along your digitization journey. Give us some insight, give us some feedback, what you would like to see, or some of the challenges, that you're facing. We'd love to hear from you. We'll have some demos in our booth. I think we have about 4 different sessions where we'll be speaking at throughout the conference. So we really, really look forward to seeing you and meeting everybody there, and hearing from you. If you are not going to be at ITS Americas, we do have several ways we can get more information. You can go learn more about our security products, more about our roadway solution. And if you would just like to contact us maybe before ITS Americas or contact us directly, you can use that QR code there at on the right-hand side, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. But we really look forward to working with you guys and really helping you, your organization, be the bridge to the future, right? And really bring this secure, connected infrastructure together to help us all grow. So that was all. That was all I had. I do think that we might have time for maybe one question. Alex, Pete, you guys good with that? We do one question, okay? Let me check the. Does look like we had one come in from the Q&A panel, just really wanting to understand better. What is Cisco doing to make direct investment into roadways? What is our approach?
Yeah, I think, I touched on the validated design. I mean, that honestly does represent a significant investment for Cisco. Like, there's myself, I literally dedicate pretty much all of my time when we're doing these cycles into that effort. Many colleagues, we we spend a lot of money with ecosystem partners buying the hardware, buying all the devices, and building it out in the lab. So that, I mean, in one way, that's literally us making a dollar's investment in terms of those person months of effort and the equipment, into building this out and documenting it. But as well as that, we invest the time, to build those relationships with ecosystem partners, right? We're coming at it from a traditional kind of IT company perspective. We know that a lot of the mind share and the subject matter expertise lives with traditional partners and vendors in that space, and so we know it's on us to kind of build those relationships, and we spend the time doing that.
Awesome.
Excuse me. I'd add to that. We're making direct investments in our customers, from our customer success teams that are helping adopt the technology and build scale faster so that we can get the secure connectivity to the edge. We can have that platform for whatever application is going on the network. We're also making directed investments through some of our programs like CDA, our Country Digital Acceleration Program, which is operating, I think, in 37 countries around the world. And those are investments we make with our customers that meet national priorities, whether it's saving lives with connectivity, or it's reducing vulnerable, Vision Zero initiatives, or it's improving the nation's cybersecurity. We have a program that helps our customers move faster as they're applying for grants. It helps them get out in front and show proof of performance. It shows some scale. So we use programs like that. Cisco is also making direct equity investments in innovative startups or innovative companies that are bringing really cool new technology to market. And whether or not that becomes available for sale through Cisco or it's in the wider market for our customers to take advantage of, we've got some documented history of making investments in the roadway space and the broader transportation market. So it's a full court press. We know that, Cassie, what you said, right? Cisco's been doing this for 30, coming on 40 years, bringing networking technologies to build the internet, and now build the internet of the future that connects the physical world. And so we're sustained. We've been here. We will be here. And we also know that it takes partnership. We can't do it alone. We need to partner with our customers and partner with amazing application providers in that ecosystem. So hope to see anyone who wants to continue the conversation out in Phoenix or at any point in the future. But hopefully for the audience on the global webinar here, we've sparked some ideas. Maybe you've got something you wanna chat one-to-one. Come right back to us. We're always good for a good recreational argument. If you disagree with anything we said, that's great too. So let's keep the conversation going.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much, and hopefully we'll see everyone in Phoenix in a couple of weeks.